Hello, welcome to Superpower Gaming. I'm Kevin here, and this is my buddy Justin, and we got Discorded Stars in real life. The real deal finally arrived. So here we go.
Very excited for this unboxing.
So this is it here. You can see the Eden Mandate on the front. We got the Michael Mentori. We've got, that's the Vaden Baking Plans, I think. We got the Zelian Purifier. We got the Glimmer of Morpheus. And so how this is going to work? Yeah. How this is going to work is that we're going to open up the box here, and we're going to show you guys what comes with it when you get Discordant Stars. But I'll first let Justin briefly introduce himself and talk about the ordering process for how you actually go about getting this. So
my name's Justin. I've been playing Twilight Imperium for around 2 years, kind of following it a little bit longer than that, but that's about when I got my base game, shortly after getting Prophecy of Kings last year, and then going through just following Space Cat's Peace Turtles, being a part of some of the homebrew groups on Discord itself, and then just hearing based on Reddit and through the Discord about Discordant Stars, a fan-made expansion that's been in the works for many years. This is essentially its second release. There was a previous release that only had 24 factions. This now includes 34 factions. Did not get the Uncharted Stars expansion for the extra tiles. This is purely the extra factions that has been released. Ordered through NB Print, which I believe is based out of Poland. There's an online order quite a few months ago, I believe September, and it recently arrived just about 2 weeks ago, and we've been waiting to get this unboxing video done.
Yeah, and if you go and check out the other videos on my channel, I've been going through each of the factions in the order from Ship's Rights of Access down, and we're about a third of the way through right now. So if you are going to play it on Tabletop Simulator, or if you actually happen to have the game in person, the only other channel I've seen right now doing Discordant Stars reviews is Esther's Gaming Cave. You should definitely go and check him out. I'm trying to get through quick reviews on ideas for how you can play these guys, given that there isn't that much content around the expansion yet. But there are so many epic factions in this game, fan expansion, that I think over time there's going to be a lot of hype around it and people wanting to play it. So we got it here. This is the start of 2025, and we're going to be unboxing Discordant Stars. So here we go. So, and we should note too, you can see all the insignia of the different factions on the box, which is very cool. And there are actually more factions in the expansion than there are in the base game and Prophecy of Kings combined, which is pretty epic. So we've got here, it comes with a bubble wrap.
Yeah, just some packing foam there.
There we go.
And then all of our contents on the inside, so we can see just a few sets of individual cards, which is going to include your agents, tech, promissory notes, all of those. Some nice sets of reference cards there, which something I would have appreciated happening in the Prophecy of Kings expansion.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad that this expansion for the factions comes with this. Great to see here.
So in this one here, we have all the riders. Is that right? So we got the riders and the other
promissory notes, and the faction promissory notes. Looks like these are agents. They'll have text. These three mini ones are all kind of mixed in, but we can go through them in a bit.
There we go.
And then, the faction-specific cards, so your quick little cheat sheets for each of the factions. Love to see this in here, just giving you like a quick and different view of how each of your faction abilities, agents work as well, and your tech, so that's a nice bit.
And then we have all of the command tokens. Well, we should know we've got the faction sheets here. We're going to go through these in detail a little bit later in the video, but that's the faction sheets. And then we have all the components, so all your command counters, your ownership tokens, they're all in here, and this is the rest of the components there. And you can see there are special tiles. We've got the home worlds, I believe. That's the home worlds. And then we've got things like a demilitarized zone marker. We've got specific faction, I guess, like
Extra tokens.
extra
A
tokens.
lot of the factions in this have extra components added to them, not necessarily changing how it's, the overall game is played, but them having just little extra things that they can do. So adding some extra stuff there. So those extra components for each of the factions are included.
So there we go. Okay, there we go. So with the Eden Mandate, the one that's featured prime and center on the box here on Discord and Stars, you can see right there the Eden Mandate, guys. There's a special component that comes in a blue envelope when you get the box here.
Just a fun little extra for anyone who was a part of this ordering. Gets a holographic card.
If you can lower it a little bit. There we go.
There we go. So you can hopefully see the holographic on there for the hero, just as a
that looks so
reference.
sick.
So,
but that's the only faction that came with that. So
yes.
It gives you an idea of how overpowered the Eden Mandate are going to be. So there we go.
Faction.
So let's take a look at the components here, where we were talking about the different insignia tiles. We've got a lot of them. As we mentioned, there are 34 different factions, and one of my favorites, actually one of both of our favorites, even though we haven't played it yet, is the Zelian Purifier. And these are the destroyed world tokens, and they look so cool, how it's all just the asteroid zooming towards the camera. So
playing as basically a sentient asteroid field that's hell-bent on creating, or making the universe asteroid field in itself is quite cool. One of the great things about this is that there's a lot of great work that's gone into the lore of each of the factions as well, so that's something I quite appreciate there.
They all have about as detailed lore as the regular base game and Prophecy of Kings expansion. So you can see there we've got some homeworlds, we have the destroyed world tile, we have the Nebula homeworld of the Glimmer of Morpheus, and on this original one here that we started with, we also have some special tiles as well. We will move on now to the next set here. So we can see here, it looks like the Oradin League.
Valerian Scourge.
The Valerian Scourge. We have the Zelian Purifier. We were just talking about those guys. We have the Eden, I believe that's the Eden Mandate there. Right at the bottom. I think it's that sort of like, that almost like Christian Cross looking one. Because they're like space paladins. I think they're further down. It's either the Niven Star Kings or it's the Eden Mandate. Oh no, it's the Niven Star Kings. Yeah. Eden Mandate looks a bit different then. But for these guys here, you can even see the Zelian Purifier. Their insignia is a broken world, and I like their flagship, the World Cracker. And speaking of them, there's their home system right there. It's a little bit more buffed up than the SARS asteroid homeworld. So there we go. We've got the homeworld for the Niven Star Kings, which features a gravity rift there. So you can see their planets orbiting that black hole in the distance. That's pretty cool.
It does look like there are an extra destroyer and space dock tokens in there. So I'm not sure. Well, I'll have to see if they have it for all the factions.
For all the factions,
but there are some factions that do have extra pieces beyond what is the standard. So extra space dock, extra destroyer, extra dreadnought in some cases. But having cardboard piece is nice to add. I might end up 3D printing some extras myself just to have the full feel. But actually having that included is just a nice addition to know you have those extra pieces. We'll see if they have everything.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I have today, actually. Today is January 4th. I've got premiering here the Gamina Raiders video. And they, of course, have 2 starting space docks, but they also have the ability to produce 2 flagships. So we'll have to check if there's an extra space dock token for them. We haven't got to their
I do see a space dock on that sheet there.
And a special flagship one too. But the Caldalry Trade Confederation are the ones that have the extra space dock in their reinforcements.
See some more destroyer tokens here. These coins are the traps. That might be the Is it the Lijo Dynasty?
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Oh, no.
No, that's
That
different.
faction there.
That faction, I think it's further down. That faction is the Eden Mandate.
Oh,
That's the Eden Mandate. Those would be then, I think, the sigil tokens.
Oh,
that they
yes,
deal
the
with,
sigil tokens, extra theirs, and then of course Berserkers of Kaliningrad tokens there that they use for their faction abilities.
Oh, is it possible that those destroyer ones could be attached to the shipwrights of Axis? Because I know they have order cards, but we're not sure because we're just going through this right here for the first time. They're the Gamina Raiders insignia. And then we also have the Rodna Mechatronics here. And if we look at the other side here, we can see the flip side of it. I kind of like the insignia for the Gamina Raiders. It's kind of cool. It's like this almost shuriken looking thing. If we go on here,
Yeah, more glory tokens from the Berserkers, and there we are, the extra Dreadnought tokens for the other factions that we have those extras, which is pretty nice. Lots of 2-planet home systems and a 3-planet home system on this set of tiles here.
and that's the Free Systems Compact. And I recently made a video about them, arguing that they're not that powerful. But I appreciate we got a couple comments saying that they are actually very powerful at the start of the game, but they're really hindered into the late game. So it'll be interesting to play with those guys to kind of see how it all works. We also have the Gamina Raiders homeworld there, which I think is pretty cool. They have like that kind of ice water and everything on their planets. If we move on here,
Yeah, we have the Nokar cell ships, the Lanifer Remnants, the Gledge Union, and Berserkers of Kaliningrad tokens here, and then also
some Axis ones too.
Some Augurs of Lixium tokens as well, just along the side. Lots of tokens stuffed onto this one here.
And the Augurs of Elixim video will be premiering on January 5th. So by the time this video comes out, that'll be available as well for you to go and check out to see some tips on how to play them. They, of course, have the ability to see into the future with regards to public objectives. So they're pretty interesting.
Interesting there. And then we have the Relic tokens. That's an added benefit for one of the factions there, where they essentially receive faction tokens and their flagship gets stronger.
And we have the Gledge Union homeworld, which is just one planet, and it has no influence at all for their starting. So they're very resource intense, as well as the Axis, which is the same but with a more powerful homeworld. We move on here, we can see we've got more insignia tokens here. We've got more commands. We've got more Eden Mandate pieces
there.
And if we turn it over to the other side, we can see a Gledge Union insignia there as well. And we also have here...
We have some goatee, or perhaps it's fish wayfarers, depending on the fun pronunciation there.
And then, if we move on, we come to the Eden Mandate's homeworld, which is a 3-planet system that's actually kind of powerful. It has their homeworld of Eden, which is a 3/3, which alone is kind of a powerful planet. And then they have a couple extra ones for influence as well. So it's a bit harder to defend, but as we'll see when we get to that faction guide, they of course have the ability to start with 3 techs of any ones that you want, as long as they have no prerequisites and they're different colors.
We also see some of the increased commodity tokens that go with the Mycomentori as they get more space docks. They increase their commodity available values. There are no extra dice in this for the Mycomentori, so that's just something to keep note. Getting this, you will need to get some extra D10s to use for that faction.
And there is the homeworld of the Goatee Wayfarers, where it's just empty space. They're a very interesting faction, and we'll talk about them. But there we go. So that's it for those components. So in this portion of the video, we're going to be talking about the different faction sheets. So I'm going to start off here with the Nokar cell ships. So with the Nokar cell ships, these guys, in brief, allow you to essentially sell off your fleet to be used as assets in other people's combat. Hence their cell ships name. They feature 4 commodities, and their whole thing revolves around being hired guns, essentially. And so we'll go more into depth in the faction guide videos, but if you see any factions that look like they might look interesting to you, we'll eventually have a video on it. So that's the Nokar cell ships.
Here we have the Zellian Purifier, so it's that sentient asteroid field faction. Their interesting thing is that their infantry can bombard. So when you're up in space doing an invasion, you're going to bombard down, but anyone that bombards will have to engage in the actual ground combat as well. So quite interesting with that there. Love their lore, the pictures, and all their agents are various types of asteroid fields.
Yeah, these guys are so cool. And we talked about earlier how they feature a destroyed worlds tokens as well that you basically replace the destroyed system with. So they're very cool. We have the Velder Sovereignty here. In brief, these guys basically act as basically a space conglomerate. So they have corporate entity, and they allow you to have 4 faction promissory notes. They have branch office attachments, and those branch office attachments allow you to essentially gain commodities or to convert into trade goods throughout the game. And their aesthetic is kind of cool. They have this sort of cyberpunky sort of vibe going on, and their homeworld has like this sort of glow to it that I think is kind of cool. So we'll put that down over here.
I have the Valerian Scourge here, their sigil being like a trident. One thing I've noticed about the expansion, there's probably 4 or 5 kind of almost aquatic themed factions themselves, which is kind of a cool different way to take space and, you know, ships and things. They are a cruiser faction, so some special abilities with their cruisers. They also get extra action cards from winning combats, and with their flagship and cruisers combined, they have a sneaky way of forcing someone to retreat and then having them pay you trade goods and trying to retreat. And keeping you locked within combat or forcing you out and having to pay for it. So that is the Valerian Scourge.
We have next the Dledge Union here. The Dledge Union is a space mining faction where, as we talked about in the intro there, their homeworld doesn't feature any influence, but it has a high resource count. And for these guys here, they have these special core tokens. And if you place those core tokens throughout the galaxy on systems other than Mechatol Rex, you can get up to 4 trade goods from those specific core tokens. So they're very trade focused or trade good focused faction, and they basically are kind of like the human equivalent to the Zellian Purifier, where they destroy worlds through mining them.
Now we have the Rodna Mechatronics, basically a bunch of space engineers. They have some Dead Space vibes with their actual outfit. They are a War Sun faction. So they start off with War Suns, and it's kind of nice to see another War Sun faction other than Muat to kind of encourage that coming out more. War Suns, their fun part is, well, not so fun, is that they can't move, but they do count as structures, and they can produce. So essentially you have mobile space docks. Once you get them upgraded, they can move, but they do count as structures, and building things out of them is quite deadly. So we have the Rodna Mechatronics.
Next we got the Damone Flotilla, and I did make a video early on about these guys. So if you're interested in them and you like their aesthetic, you can go and check that out. The Damone Flotilla focuses on fleets. They have a faction ability, which is more of a hindrance in some ways, where in order to transport ground troops, you need to have an equivalent number of ships. But the advantage to them is they start with things like, for example, 2 dreadnoughts, 2 destroyers. So they have a good fleet capability right from the beginning to start wiping out opponents. These guys are strong. They also should be noted that their destroyers only count as half a ship against your fleet pool, meaning that their destroyers function in essence like fighters. So they're, in some ways, they remind me of the Argent Flight, but with a blend of the Letnev going on there. And they have a really purple skeleton type aesthetic going on. So I think they're pretty cool.
Next is the Eladrin League. If you've ever wanted to play Stuart Little as a mercenary, this is your faction. So they have these things called policy cards, so some extras there, and they have two sides. They have a plus side and a minus side, and basically they give you a slight boon depending on the side, or a slight change to how your faction acts. And then based on their agents, you can do different things with how many you have on the positive or the negative side. So they are a very interesting faction because of the variability of how they play, but then having their hero able to change some of those. So normally you can't change or flip over the policy cards to their other sides to maybe switch up your tactics or get a different set of benefits, but their hero does change it. So this is the Eladrin League.
And next up, we have the Caldari Trade Confederation. So we do have a faction guide video on these guys. Their big thing is that they have 4 space docks available to build. They also have the ability to emergency deploy space docks if you decide to go down that tech route, where you can just as an action produce a space dock, which can be quite powerful. Say, for example, you're holding Mechatol, somebody does reactor meltdown on it, you can just bring one back out there. Another thing about these guys that's interesting is that they have 4 commodities, and their space docks as well work as special units, and they allow for anti-fighter barrage. So their space docks are capable of destroying your enemy's fighters, which is quite powerful.
And next is the mushroom people,
Oh, yeah.
the Mycomentori. So they're quite unique as they have these things called the Omen dice. So essentially you get 4 additional d10s that you roll at the start of each round, and they are set dice that you can use in combat, in gravity rift rolls, and most situations where you can substitute a die that you've rolled with one of these dice here. And compared to the Seldari, of 4 commodities, they only have 1 commodity to start.
Yes.
So quite a weak start there, but they have upgradable space docks, which you can deploy by sacrificing 4 infantry for, and every time you get a space dock out, your commodity value increases as well. So kind of a varied faction here where it kind of builds up, but being able to substitute one of your opponent's killing dice rolls with a 2 that you have rolled at the start of your round is a nice bit of there. So the Mycomentori.
Next, we have the Shipwrights of Axis. They were the first one that I made a video on for Discordant Stars, and their big thing is their military-industrial complex. So if we take a look at these guys, they're space ants, and what they do is they hand out Axis order cards throughout the game, where your opponents can build ships essentially. You're not able to use those to build up your own fleet, but you can sell these things off. You're basically wheeling and dealing, and you use these guys to basically get commodities going. And they, of course, have 5 commodities as well. So they are, in some ways, a more militaristic version of the Emirates of Khan. They're capable of generating a lot of money by building weapons people want. So that's these guys.
And next up is the Latokrat. Basically, sentient mountain druids is the way I like to describe them. They have a fun part where they're very resource heavy. So if they don't have any ground forces on a planet, the resource value is increased by 1. The problem is when it comes to voting. So their votes are based solely on the amount of planets that you have. So the influence value does not matter when using votes in the agenda phase. So a little bit of an issue there when trying to control or sway elections in your favor. The other thing is their bombardment. So when they bombard, they have the ability to cancel those hits caused by bombardment and instead deploy infantry as an alternative to a hit. so you can get more ground forces on. So it's kind of a trade-off, like a guaranteed hit for a body on the ground. So yeah, fun green aesthetic there. So that is the Letok Krask.
Yeah, those guys are very cool too. One thing that I think is worth mentioning about them as well is that one of their techs allows them to exhaust planets instead of use command tokens for secondaries, which that was what interested me in
That's
them.
a very powerful one there. That's definitely a great...
Speaking of powerful, we have the Eden Mandate. These guys are extremely OP. These guys start with 3 technologies that you get to choose as long as they don't have any prerequisites and as long as they're different colors. You could start with Dark Energy Tap and Scanlick. You could start with Anti-Mass and Plasma Scoring. You could go right for Cruiser 2 in round 1 if you go red, green, yellow. They're so versatile. The other thing about them, though, is they have a 3-planet homeworld, which is harder to defend, but has a lot of influence on it. The final thing about the Eden Mandate is that the Eden Mandate are able to drop out these sigils. We talked about them earlier.
Yeah, the sigil tokens.
They're in the tokens there, and so that adds to their playstyle as well. So that's the Eden Mandate, and they are basically space paladins. Where if you ever play Paladin or whatnot, and World of Warcraft or D&D, now you can play a paladin in Twilight Imperium, Discordant Stars. So Eden Mandate.
And for all you Yu-Gi-Oh fans out here, we have the Lijo Dynasty. If you've ever wanted to say, you've activated my trap card, this is the faction for you. Love the lore on these guys. They're basically like a Dragonborn style faction, very political, and they have their traps. And the fun thing about their traps is they have one that is basically a feint trap. So after you've done your tactical action, you place a trap face down on the planet itself. And that can have a variety of effects, such as doing damage or reducing resources or influence for something, exhausting a card, or you can just do a feint. So you can place a trap out, someone maybe doesn't want to activate it, or they do and realize, oh, this does nothing. Another way that they have an optional trap card, so an extra trap card if you want something a bit more powerful. So they have one that you can add in if you feel like they need an extra little buff. But they do have a variety to start. And their attachments, basically, the one thing about them is they don't count towards objectives. So some of these factions have extra structures or extra things they place down, which allows them to get objectives. Those traps do not count towards that. But fun little wrinkle to add into a game with cards.
Lijo Dynasty is absolute hype. The free systems compact. These are a bit complicated. They start with arguably the worst homeworld in the game. They have a 3-planet system that only has 1 influence or resource per planet, which is very underpowered. But it should be noted here, and it was pointed out by a commenter in the video that I made on them, that the Diplomat's ability that they have here is once per action, you may exhaust 1 uncontrolled planet in the galaxy, and you can spend its resource or influence. So that allows them to actually build up a pretty big fleet in even the first round. These guys are going to be focused on getting command tokens, and they're going to be focused on getting a lot of ships out before all of the planets in the galaxy get taken. In some ways, they remind me a little bit of the Extra Kingdom from the base game, because the Extra are able to claim up uncontrolled systems. These guys are able to use those for resources or influence, which is pretty cool. So they're space raccoons, basically.
Rocket Raccoon, here to mess up your game. Next is the Cairo Sodality. So they have an aesthetic that's kind of like yin, or these plague people. They're interesting because whenever you use the politics strategy card, you get to basically place down extra infantry on places around planets that you own. They also have some quirks with the way their infantry works. So in cases of draws, you instead win. So specific rules where both of you have gone to your last, you have that 1v1 that's been going for 5 rounds, you both die finally, you actually win in that case. So a neat wrinkle there. As well as their flagship, whenever you commit ground forces, you just automatically add an extra infantry. So they're very infantry based, again, similar to Yin in that way, but they function a little bit differently. So another fun faction here.
Next, we have the Augurs of Elixir. And the Augurs are basically the space monks, where they're able to predict the future, essentially, in the sense that you take one of the unscored public objectives each round, and you keep it on your faction sheet, and you can see what it's going to be. Nobody else can. And then when the next one is revealed, they have to show yours that you have. So you essentially get an extra turn to prepare to score public objectives. They are an interesting faction. I recently did make a video on them, which you can go and check out. And they have a technology called Sentient Data Pool, which allows you to, at the start of the status phase, spend 3 trade goods to research 1 technology, which I think is quite powerful. Because normally, with the technology secondary card, you need to spend 4 trade goods and a command token. With these guys, you could do that in addition to this, or you could just get your technology that round for only 3 trade goods. So they are quite interesting. And their commander as well provides a yellow tech skip, which is really important because that technology I talked about there, the data pool, that one is a yellow tech. So you're going to want to get out your commander really quickly with these guys so you can start researching tech faster.
And speaking of monks, we have the actual monks, the monks of Kaloum.
The monks of Kaloum.
So this faction here has some interesting abilities with its space cannon. So when you're not active player, if you have a bunch of PDS or their flagship that does have space cannon, you can only use one of them at a time. But when you are the active player and you're moving things, some of your ships gain space cannon 8. So you're adding an extra set of shots into a battle there. So it's a fun thing there. A quirk about them, though, is you cannot redistribute your command tokens during the status phase. So you're going to need to do that using the Warfare Primary, Predictive Intelligence, or some other method. But when you do eventually pass, you get an extra command token as long as that pool is empty. So you've used all your strategy token, that pool is empty. When you pass, you're going to add an extra token into that pool. And then an interesting part that actually plays in with their commander is that they have an action where you spend a command token from a strategy pool to ready one of your technologies. Early on, it doesn't matter a ton other than to unlock that second agent there. But that is something to note when you have something that refreshes and gives you a big bonus in either maybe researching technology or getting a big blast against some enemies. So that is the Monks of Kaloum.
Next, we have the Cortelli Tribunal, and they are basically warriors. They're space warriors. And if we look at their primary faction ability, Zealous, they allow you to, when you spend a secondary, or you spend a command token to do the secondary of warfare, you can do the primary of warfare instead. So these guys are very combat focused, and their flagship has this special ability where it can allow itself to become damaged in order for you to gain a command token, which is interesting. I can see these guys having the potential to do a lot of damage. They only, however, have 3 commodities, so they have some pluses and minuses to them, but they are a 2C4I faction, which is kind of rare, I feel, in the Discordant Stars expansion. A lot of them are only 1 carrier, even if they have enough infantry. These guys are your classic 2C4I. So if you want to go out and expand and do some combat, you can consider the Cortelli Tribunal.
Another 2C4I is the Kulak Society. So they're basically mercenaries that kind of come out of nowhere. So a lot of their faction abilities deal with them when you produce, that you can place some of your produced ships onto the faction sheet, thereby capturing them. So you won't have all of your plastic out on the board, but after someone moves into a system where you have units, or when you move into a system, you can essentially deploy from your captured reserve out onto the field. It is limited to 2 ships and 2 ground forces that you can add. So that's a little quirk there. I'm not totally sold on how this should work as an ability. Maybe it makes your armies look a little less dangerous when it's out on the board, but I'm not sure how useful this will be in a game situation. Once we play it, we'll figure out if it adds a significant difference, but not sold on that ability as a whole, instead of just having everything out and having a show of force rather than maybe baiting someone in and then going for a battle there. The last part is when you get to look at the start of the top of the cultural hazards or industrial exploration decks, and you also get to look at the relic deck. So you can see the next cards in each of those decks there, which allows you, being starting with scanning drone network, you can right away just scan, get some relics or a card there that you like out of those decks, added the one. So that is the Kolek Society.
And speaking of factions that we're not really too sure about necessarily, is the Lanifer Remnants. So I'm sure there's a very powerful way to play these guys. I haven't really figured it out yet. They are not able, well, we'll just read the tech or the faction ability here. A new edifice. You may not use technology specialties. So that can be quite challenging. When you would gain a relic, instead purge it and explore up to 3 planets you control. I feel that a lot of players would prefer to have a relic than to be able to explore.
Yeah.
But they do start with the ability of choosing the tech that you start with. You get to choose 2 of either Dark Energy Tap, Scanlink Drone Network, or AI Development Algorithm. Those are some of my favorite technologies in the game. They're all very powerful. With these guys and their exploration focus, there's a key emphasis there on Scanlink. But it should be noted as well that with these guys, when researching a non-unit upgrade tech, you may purge one of your relic fragments to ignore one prereq on the technology you are researching. So they're very focused around getting relic fragments, but not actually using them to get relics so much. But I'm not sure about the utility of how this is going to work in terms of how effective it is in combat or in scoring objectives. I'd be interested to hear if anybody's played these guys before, or in the future if you play them, how it works, because at least just looking at it here, it's kind of a difficult faction.
Next up, probably one of my favorite factions, the Berserkers of Kalengard. So they are a warfaring faction. They have these extra tokens that we saw, which are called glory tokens. So after you win a combat, you get to place a glory token down. So first you have to win that combat to be able to use it. But once you have that out on the field, anytime you roll a 10, you get an extra hit. So getting some extra hits out. You also capture all of your fighters and infantry that are destroyed during combat. That benefit is once you eventually pass, you can return 4 of those to your reinforcements and you get an extra command token. So if you have 8, that gets you 2. So some extras there. Some other cool things is that they actually start with a non-faction unit upgrade technology. So they don't start with a standard blue, yellow, green, red technology. It's a unit upgrade. They also have upgradable carriers, which have a combat roll of 8. And their movement will increase and the capacity increase when they increase. And these are quite good. I believe their Star Dragon 2 might also have sustained damage. But it's quite a good faction. And they also have a technology, faction technology, that allows you to use the unit upgrade technologies that you have for their colors to ignore bits when you upgrade more tech. So you're going to be upgrading tech because of your Valor tokens here, which relates to, a Valor ability, which relates to your Glory tokens. So you can upgrade more tech, and then your unit upgrades allow you to use skips to get more technology. So it kind of steamrolls there, all about unit tech upgrades. So very cool faction there. Love the aesthetic. This is one I'm excited to get to the table.
And next we have the Mervita Protectorate here. The Mervita Protectorate are big for having mobile PDS, which is the Gauss cannon. And the Gauss cannon is upgradable, but it should be noted it doesn't have deep space cannon. So it's ultimately a mobile platform for participating in combat. It's a structure, but it's also movable. It can go in the space area, and it does hit on 4s when you upgrade it, but it's not able to fire into the adjacent systems, which is kind of a drawback. These guys have an ability as well with their leader suite that allows them to essentially get extra technology. They get basically research unit upgrade technologies easier. And another thing about them, which is kind of a plus side, is that you can have as many PDS in a system as you have command tokens in your fleet pool. So their PDS basically are treated as capital ships essentially, which is interesting. But they have the drawback of not being able to produce infantry directly. And given that they only start with 2 infantry, and the fact that their PDSs aren't able to hit into adjacent systems, I'm a bit more skeptical about the Mervita Protectorate now. I was initially really excited about them because I really like PDS, but it remains to be seen, at least for us, how effective they are in actual combat situations. I can see them being very powerful within the system itself, though. Your big challenge with these guys is just going to be to get a lot of infantry or mechs.
All right, next we have is the Gamina Raiders with that shuriken-like faction symbol there. They get an extra flagship, so that's a fun thing. So they're going to have 2 flagships. It's going to be the Lord and the Lady. The extra flagship will be an extra card that you're just going to place next to your faction sheet. And their main ability is the rule of 2. So when you have 2 of anything, so 2 non-fighter ships in the same system, you're going to apply +2 to the result of each of those units' combat rolls. So it encourages smaller fleets and armies for a large benefit to your rolls, because a +2 is quite significant. Like a morale boost is only giving you 1 for round. This is +2 as long as you have that 2. So once one of them is destroyed, you're going to lose that benefit. But it makes destroyers, or even just getting more carriers out on the board, so much more powerful. Once you have a dreadnought hitting on 3, having 2 dreadnoughts in a system hitting on 3s with that sustained damage, that could be a deadly just 2-ship army right there. But just having 2, it's a trade-off. Big hits for smaller control. So they are very cool. All of their aesthetics is in 2s. All of their agents have 2 people in that as well. So it's all about duality for this one. Of course, the home system's called the Twins. So very fitting for them. So that is the Gamina Raiders.
And next we have the Glimmer of Morpheus. The Glimmer of Morpheus was the faction that really initially interested me in Discordant Stars. They kind of work similarly in their homeworld to the Imperium, in that they start with a nebula in their homeworld, but nebulae normally provide a defensive bonus when you're in combat. With these guys, it's like that, but hyped up big time. Because for these guys, when they're the defender, when you go in, and it should be noted here that that's actually the case in any system, but they're basically like nebulae themselves. So when they move into any system, they get this defensive bonus, which is that they can spend influence to build a ship. We'll just clarify, it's facsimile. At the start of space combat, while you are the defender, you may spend influence equal to the cost value of one of your opponent's ship in the active system to then place 1 ship from your reinforcements in that system. So let's say your opponent brings in a War Sun to try to destroy you. You've got some influence, boom, you have a War Sun now. Now they have to fight your War Sun. So that's an extreme example, but you could do that with a destroyer for cheap. You could do that with a carrier. You can do that with anything. You just mimic whatever they're bringing in, essentially, which they need to prepare for that, because what it means is that your fleets are always going to be bigger than what they initially look like, which is a pretty good deterrent. And these guys, one of the things that I like about them is that they start with the exploration on max. They start with Dark Energy Tap, and they start with Serene Tools, not Scanlink. No, they start with Dark Energy Tap. But in that sense, they're like the Imperium. But I would argue they're a bit stronger in combat than the Imperium.
And next we have the Goatee Wayfarers, or Fish Wayfarers, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Another one of my favorite factions out of Discordant Stars here. They have this kind of sea monster in space vibe to them. It reminds me very much of the sea monsters in Star Wars that you see on Naboo, in other areas as well. So really love that there. They have a few quirks to them that make them very interesting. So first off, their home system is a blank system. You have a home system card that cannot be taken away from you, so that is offset from the actual board itself, so that can never be removed. But their actual home system is their flagship. So wherever their flagship goes, that becomes your home system. So if your flagship ever gets destroyed, you do lose out on being able to score public objectives, but you're able to move your home system around the board. As they get upgrades, they can use empty systems as wormholes to go from one to another, and I believe their promissory note gives that ability to a partner there. So this is a very interesting and fun faction. A lot of ways you can kind of mess with movement, and getting some bonuses there. So this is a really cool faction, the Goatee Wayfarers.
Next, we have the Niven Star Kings. These guys are interesting because they have these wound tokens, and the wound tokens, when they're placed down, they turn that system into both a nebula and a gravity rift. They also start in a gravity rift, and their units don't roll for gravity rifts. So in that sense, they kind of have some Cabal energy going on with them. They're pretty interesting. They have the starting technology of dark energy tap, which I really like. They also have plasma scoring. So they're a very combat focused version of the the Imperium or Glimmer of Morpheus energy going on there, because it's not too common to start with dark energy tap. They also start with a dreadnought, which is pretty powerful. Now they are able to essentially hurt themselves to gain wound tokens, and when you explore a frontier token, you may draw an additional card. Choose one card to resolve and return the rest of the frontier deck. So they're very exploration and combat focused. So that's the Niven Star Kings.
Next is the Savages of Semai. I believe that's how it's pronounced. They have, we can only be described as, was it Transformers Beast Formers from back in the day? I think that's what it was called, where it was Transformers that are like cybernetic. So it's the cybernetic gorilla is the main faction part of it there. They have the most powerful infantry in the game. So their infantry roll on a 5. The quirk with that is that you can only produce one of them at a time. So it's that trade-off. Do you go with the mech that hits a little bit less but has sustained damage, or do you go with an infantry that hits on 5 and can be upgraded down the line? They're also based around action cards. So they do start with Neuromotivator, which really ties into their abilities. So whenever you draw an action card, you have the choice to draw one less. You're always drawing 2 action cards when you're getting them with Neuromotivator in the status phase. You have the choice to draw one less, and then you can take a card from the discard pile. So when you're going to get that action card, maybe from the secondary politics or through the status phase, you can draw one less and take one from the graveyard. So after someone's gotten your reactor meltdown on you or used a Rise of Messiah, you can take that from the discard pile and use it for yourself. But of course, to balance that out, is anytime you use an action card, they purge the card instead of discarding it. So it balances out there, can't be used again. So very interesting faction, lots of pros and cons to it, the trade-offs that you can make. So they're quite a cool one. So the Savages of Semai.
Next we have the Zealots of Rodan. The Zealots of Rodan here, they have this sort of blue space warrior thing going on. They have this ancient knowledge faction ability, which says when you use a tech specialty to ignore a prereq on a technology card you're researching, you may ignore one additional prereq of the same color. these are pretty powerful because what it means is that you can get up right away into the end game of technology trees pretty quickly. So you can go pretty quickly into fleet logistics. You can go pretty quickly into lightweight deflector. You can go into potentially getting right up to hyper motivator very quickly with them. They, of course, have 3 commodities. They start with biostims, which is an interesting one. Discordant Stars really tried to mix up the different starting techs to feature a lot more of the POK technologies. A drawback to these guys, though, is that they're only starting with 1 carrier and 4 infantry. So they're going to have a harder time in terms of colonization early on. But that is the Zealots of Rodan. And as I said, the advantage with these guys is that they're able to zoom through the tech trees and get to the big tech very quickly. So there we go.
Next is the, I believe it's Chiron Hordes.
Chiron
Chiron Horde, probably Chiron Hordes. They start with 2 extra dreadnoughts and 1 extra mech, a part of their reinforcement. So increasing the amount of dreadnoughts you can have, while they also have a faction upgrade, is their dreadnought. So you're giving extra dreadnoughts of an even more powerful variety that when destroyed, you place a fighter in this system. So basically, destroying, finally gotten through their systems, destroyed their dreadnoughts, like, oh no, little fighter pops up just to, tease you a little bit further there. With them, they have this ability for being on the defensive side. So after you've been attacked and you win a space combat as a defender, you can produce a ship in the system. And depending on how many ships you lost during that combat, it reduces the cost of that ship that you're about to place. So that is a special thing there. And then also their mechs count as structures for everything other than game scoring purposes. So that relates into their flagship with some abilities that gets in there where it adds an additional die when it's near one of your structures. So that is the Chiron Hordes.
No, they're very powerful. We move on now to the Tenellis Syndicate, or the Nellis Syndicate. These guys are focused on secret objectives. Their plausible deniability allows them to, when they draw 1 or more secret objective cards, they get to draw an extra one and then return 1 to the secret objective deck. They also, with information brokers, are able to hold on to 1 additional unscored secret objective. So for these guys, they are basically the secret objective cards, what the Sorrow tribes are to action cards. They prune through and hold on to the best, which for scoring can be quite potent because it means you're able to run through some really good ones and you're able to, get some points out faster with them. Whereas other folks might struggle to score their secret objectives. They also are cool because they allow you to have a choice of starting technologies, which is they let you pick 2 of the following: Neuromotivator, Anti-Mass Deflectors, or Plasma Scoring. And I would argue with these guys, it is situationally dependent, but there's a good argument for going Plasma Scoring and Anti-Mass with them, because green is not necessarily as favorable, but we'll do a faction video on these guys later on. But that's the Tenellis Syndicate, and they're kind of like kind of a mafia of just different species and stuff. They're a diverse bunch. So
next is the Florzan Profiteers. So this kind of a jellyfish Cthulhu-esque faction, another, an aquatic theme that we've seen reoccurring in this. So they are about exploration. So when you explore a planet, you get to choose another trait of a planet that you control. So if you have, a hazardous planet, you're going for, actually cultural relics, you happen to have more cultural, you can choose, hey, that's now cultural, I'm going to take from the cultural deck. And when you get a relic, you actually get to get 2 cards and you choose one of them. So you can more choices in your relic options there. You can choose something that's a little bit better. Maybe you just get an okay relic and then you get that excellent relic as another option. So a little bit more cycling through there. Another part is their fighters. their fighters already start with the ability to move on their own without being transported. So that is a great way to clog up areas all around your system without having to have an upgraded fighter. Just a lot of protective benefits with that, just placing them all over the planet. So yeah, the Florzan Profiteers.
And on my end, we're going to be ending here with the Vaden banking plans. And these guys are kind of interesting. One of the things that I find is kind of cool about them is their faction insignia is literally just that guy there with his cloak, and he's kind of, scheming. We got the starting technology, which is to choose two of the following. You can choose Neural Motivator and Antimass, and you can also pick from Sarween tools. So that's pretty important. Blue is generally the most powerful technology, and these guys have an ability where they have a technology which is, if I recall correctly, a blue technology which allows them to spend trade goods to increase the movement of a unit. So essentially a gravity drive with infinite speed if they have infinite money, essentially. And their big thing is basically giving out these loans, and they're just all around kind of an interesting faction. Though it should be noted with them, they do only have 3 commodities, which I found kind of surprising given that they're banking plans. You would expect them to be more in the league of the Emirates of Hakan, for example, but they're not. They're a little bit different than that. But if you ever play them, let me know what tech you decided to start with and what you would recommend there.
And last on my side here is the Bentor Conglomerate. So another kind of cyberpunk-esque kind of android feel to them, this humanoid mixed with cybernetic faction there. And on the back, your favorite thing, a bunch of locked content in the lore itself. The first time I saw this, I thought I had done something wrong on the computer, or I had to subscribe, and then realized a part of it is like, oh, this is actually kind of a unique way to put their lore. Says you use your last free intelligence report preview this galactic cycle. Please subscribe to unlock the rest of this report. How often do we have to deal with such of those things these days with various games?
Yeah, they're like the New York Times. So.
Exactly. So this is another faction where you get to choose out of a list of technologies. So psychoarchaeology, dark energy chap, and Scanlan drone network. They are interesting in that a lot of their abilities are based around what you can do with your flagship. So your flagship has anti-fighter barrage, bombardment, and space cannon. So the 3 main abilities there. And when you actually get relic fragments, the first one that you get of each color or colorless goes onto the faction board itself. So you don't actually get to hold on to those to use for the first one that you get. But each one you get increases the ability of all of the abilities of your flagship. So you want to get that flagship out and basically get one piece of every fragment to add to it. And then you can also add a little bit more exploration there if you have production in a system where you haven't already explored a planet as well. So not a great ability there because you do have to have that production bit, but it gets you to explore a bit more on that. So flagship faction that's always increasing in abilities as you get more relic fragments. So that is the Bentor Conglomerate.
And with that, we're going to move on to the cards. So there we go. That is the factions for Discordant Stars. So here we are. We're going to be reviewing the cards and components here. We got Enzo joining us here.
Say hello.
Hey, Enzo. Enzo, say hi. No? Okay. So we'll quickly run through this. This was the Eden Mandate Hero that Justin was talking about earlier. Very cool. And then next we've got the different promissory notes of factions here. So you can kind of see, we're not going to go through them all, but if you take a look here, there's a lot. We'll just leave this down here for a second. If you take a look here, we got so many of these guys. There's 34 factions, and each one of them are going to have a lot of different promissory notes. So there's a lot there that you get in the box. Additionally here, we have the components that I was talking about earlier. So there'll be things like, for example, the branch office reserve bank, where you know, that's a specific component to that faction.
Some special order cards.
We had Axis. We had the Axis order. So if we take a look here, you can see these are the Axis order cards from the Shipwrights of Axis. They hand these cards out. That's what the back looks like. They hand these cards out to other players, and then those players can claim them to just produce a carrier or a destroyer, or actually they get 2 destroyers or a carrier. So that's those guys. If you kind of want to go through those
over
guys.
here, I have the planet cards for all the various factions. So look good here. I also have all of the mech cards and their various abilities all throughout this deck. I also have a few of the stacks of leaders over here, and a few of the promissory notes as well. I will note with these cards, I have noticed that they do feel a bit different than the base game and Prophecy Kings expansion cards. There's a slightly almost different texture to it a bit, and the cards maybe feel like slightly flimsier. They're still feel pretty good. I think it's most noticeable maybe in the faction sheets themselves.
These are thinner. These are definitely thinner.
They a bit more of a droop to them, but overall they still feel good. It is just a different textural feel, and perhaps not as stiff as the original cards there.
For here we have the trap cards that Justin was talking about for the Liu dynasty. This is what they look like here, and on the map you're just going to see it like that, and you don't know what it could be, and then all of a sudden you flip it and it's the Feint card. Okay, great. Or it's the what is that? Graphitic inhibitor. Well, this card is attached. You may reveal this card after a player activates this system. Till the end of this tactical action, that player cannot move more ships than 1 fewer than their fleet supply limit. So it gives you an advantage of, you know, going into this sort of situation. They're going to be taking a deficit somewhere. So that's the trap cards for the Liu dynasty. We also had the Goatee ability here. This is what the Goatee card looks like. That's pretty cool. And that's their ability. When you move 1 or more of your ships into a system that contains no planets, gain 1 commodity. You may score secret objectives if your home system contains no planets. So you want to move your guy out, basically, and go and take over the galaxy with these guys. We have here the Lord from the Gamina Raiders, so that's their special flagship. Next we have the specific
Legend League's
policies. I believe they call these policies. So if we take a look here, you can see they have a plus or a minus on them. So I can flip this over and have it be a different policy. So you can do things like control, or you can do connect. So there's a positive and a negative side to it.
Yeah, they're all themed around certain aspects. So one is like dealing with the people, dealing with your armies, and dealing with your economy. So the pluses and minuses go together in a theme for each side, which I find is just a cool addition for the lore aspect.
Oh yeah. Next we have the faction-specific technology. So this is an example. This is the Shipwrights of Axis Rift engines. So we talked about that in a video on them. You can go and check that out on this channel here. Be sure to subscribe as well. This is the emergency deployment from the Caldari Confederation. That allows you to literally just exhaust that card and bring out a space dock, which is crazy. So there's a lot of these guys. So they have the insignia in the top part. They've got the special text below. So in that, it looks very similar. It's basically the same as your standard Twilight Imperium. And this goes on. There's a lot of these. Like if you can see here, the rest of these are all faction-specific technologies or units. So this is the Impactor from the Zellian Purifier. That's what it'll look like. And then you can see in the back it has their insignia there. But a lot of just a lot of faction-specific technologies
and pieces there. And then the last bit we have here are these nice reference cards here, and this is I love this addition to the actual box set itself. This is something I hope be included, maybe the Codex 4 for the new factions. I know reference cards are part of the previous codices, but just having this included is super, super nice. It goes over all of your factions' abilities, the faction tech, complexity levels, and just various, your mech, your flagship, and your promissory note. And it just says it in like a quick, refined, concise way that's different from the sheet itself. So just example, ship rights access for its flagship says repairs your ship when it produces hits. So just an alternative way to say what is on the actual sheets themselves, the actual cards. So you get a different way of understanding them. But this I love is a great addition. These are also great ways if you want to do like a secret draft or drafting instead of just from the faction sheets, placing these out and selecting from there. That's also a great way to just get a quick look or quick pick of a varied faction. So the faction reference cards there.
Those are super useful, especially for new players. So
yes.
They're very good.
I'll definitely be using those myself, even when we bring it to the board, get all these there, because there's a lot of new stuff in this expansion.
When you have Discordant Stars, Prophecy Kings, and the base game, you're looking at 58 or so factions. That's a lot of factions to remember. So it's good to have those reference sheets. Next, we have the Leader Suite. So this big pile over here, you can see here, that's all the leaders. Because we have 34 factions, we have over 100 of these cards. So there's a lot there that come with the box. So as an example here, we'll show you the Glimmer of Morpheus. This is their Leader Suite here. So you have them flipped over, and then on the other side you have it where they're not ready yet. So you can see there, these guys are specifically nebulae, which is kind of cool. All their guys are nebulae, and that's just an example. We're not going to run through all of these, but there are 34 in that pile. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. And we also in that deck have the alliances, so you can give these out basically to other players as a promissory note. This is an example of the Shipwrights of Axis alliance, and there's their insignia with the ant guy there on the back. So that's pretty cool. I believe that concludes all the components that we get in the box. But it should be noted here, we only got the Discordant Stars fan expansion itself. We didn't get the one that featured all the extra tiles. There is another expansion that gives you new planet systems and new anomalies and stuff. But this, though, is a very, very cool fan expansion, and we can't wait to get Twilight Imperium Discordant Stars going. And we're going to be playing it with the regular factions mixed in, but my guess is a lot of people are going to want to play with the new stuff here.
I know, that's basically I'll be
doing that.
From now on.
Like think about the hype of when you got Prophecy of Kings. Now it's like that all over again, except it's bigger than Prophecy of Kings and Twilight Imperium combined. It's huge. And this has been our review here of Discordant Stars. So be sure to subscribe here and go and check out all the faction videos. And if you're interested as well, if you like other games, we got our DEF CON video over there that's coming up on 300K views right now. For whatever reason, right around Christmas time is when the YouTube algorithm absolutely promotes the heck out of that video. Because I mean, if you notice in it, Santa's flying around as all the nukes are going off. So it's kind of funny. So with that, we're going to wrap this up here. Thanks for tuning in. And let us know what factions you played as, what you like, if you won. And with all the choices you've got in terms of starting tech on so many factions, which techs did you pick? Because playing one of them starting with Neural and Antimass is a different game than starting with Sarween and Antimass, for example. So, and that's just one example. So some of them you can start with, for example, the Eden Mandate, literally anything, as long as they're different colors and no prerequisites. So what I'm curious about is, if anybody out there wants to give Eden Mandate a try, what did you start with and did you win? And would you pick that set again, or would you recommend picking a different set of technology? So with that, thanks for tuning in and have a good one, everybody. Peace.
Thanks.
Peace.
Bye.